She pulled a dying stranger from twisted metal and fire, never knowing he was the Mafia prince, or that his father would claim her as his daughter-in-law before the blood even dried. Most people in the city whispered the same thing: don't ever cross Arthur Noah. The head of the most feared Korean-American syndicate wasn't just powerful. He was untouchable, cold, calculated, ruthless to the bone. If you threatened what was his, you didn't just disappear, your entire bloodline felt the consequences. And what Arthur Noah valued most in this world wasn't money or territory. It was his son, Philip Noah, heir to the empire. 28 years old, sharp as a blade, trained since childhood to take over when the time came. He moved through the world like a shadow, silent, lethal, emotionally detached. People feared him almost as much as they feared his father. But on one catastrophic afternoon, Philip Noah crossed paths with someone nobody expected. A waitress in a coffee-stained uniform, dark curls escaping from a messy bun, balancing plates on one arm while checking her phone for the bus schedule. And that's the girl who saved his life. The intersection was chaos as usual: honking, exhaust fumes, pedestrians jaywalking. Fiona Ann's shift had just ended at the diner on 5th Street. Her feet ached. Her apron smelled like grease and burnt coffee. She was counting tips in her head, wondering if she'd have enough to cover rent and groceries this week. She didn't notice the luxury sedan idling at the red light. She didn't know Philip Noah was inside, taking a call about a shipment deal gone wrong. His driver, Mr. Kim, sat rigid in the front seat, eyes scanning the mirrors out of habit. Security protocol. Always watching. For a split second, everything seemed normal. And that's when it happened. The delivery truck came from nowhere, brakes screaming, horn blaring, the driver slumped unconscious over the wheel. It barreled through the intersection at full speed, heading straight for the passenger side of the black sedan. Everyone froze. Everyone except Fiona. She saw it. The angle, the speed, the impact point. Her body moved before her brain caught up. She dropped her bag, sprinted into the street, yanked open the sedan's back door with strength she didn't know she had. Get out, now. Philip looked up, startled. This random woman screaming at him, grabbing his arm, pulling him out of the car with desperate force. They hit the pavement hard. Fiona's shoulder slammed into concrete. Pain shot down her arm. Her knee scraped raw against asphalt. And then the world exploded. The truck smashed into the sedan with a sickening crunch of metal. The car folded like paper. Glass shattered outward in a glittering wave. The impact echoed through the street like a gunshot. People screamed. Someone shouted for 911. Fiona lay there on the ground, gasping, her hands trembling. Blood dripped from a gash on her forearm where the car door had caught her. Her vision swam, but she had gotten him out. Philip Noah stared at her, chest heaving, his expensive suit torn and dusty. His temple was bleeding, his hands were scraped, but he was alive. And this stranger, this waitress he'd never seen before in his life, had thrown herself into danger to pull him from a death trap. You. His voice came out rough, disbelieving. You pulled me out. Fiona nodded weakly, trying to sit up. I saw it coming. You weren't moving fast enough. I just reacted. No fear, no hesitation, no thought about who he was or what this might cost her. Just instinct, just heart. Philip stared at his savior, his pulse still racing, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. Mr. Kim was already on his phone, barking orders. Security would arrive in minutes. His father would know within the hour. But Philip couldn't look away from this woman. She was shaking, bleeding, looked like she'd been through a war. And she'd just saved the life of the most dangerous man she'd never know. Not yet. Philip's head felt like it had been split open with an axe. He woke to sterile white ceiling tiles, the steady beep of a heart monitor, and the familiar scent of antiseptic that meant private medical care. Not a public hospital. Somewhere his father controlled. Somewhere safe. He tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his ribs. Easy. His father's voice cut through the fog. Calm. Controlled. But there was something underneath it Philip rarely heard: relief. Arthur Noah stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, silhouette sharp against the morning light. He didn't turn around immediately. That alone told Philip something was wrong. What happened? Philip's throat felt like sandpaper. Someone tried to kill you. Arthur's tone was matter-of-fact, clinical. Sabotaged delivery truck. Driver paid off, then eliminated. The Chung Syndicate's work, we believe. You should be dead. The words hung in the air. Should be dead. Philip's memory came back in flashes. The phone call. The intersection. The screaming. That woman's face, wild with desperation, yanking him out of the car with impossible strength. The waitress, he said. Arthur finally turned. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed with something Philip couldn't quite place. She's here. What? I wasn't going to let her walk away. Arthur moved toward the door, opened it slightly, and nodded to someone outside. Not after what she did. And not after her face was seen by half the street, including whoever was watching to confirm your death. The door opened wider, and there she was. Fiona Ann looked smaller in the oversized hospital chair, swimming in a borrowed sweater that wasn't hers. Her curly hair was still a mess, pulled back with the same rubber band. Her right arm was wrapped in clean white bandages from wrist to elbow. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked exhausted, terrified, but when her gaze met Philip's, she didn't look away. Most people couldn't hold his stare for more than 3 seconds. She didn't even blink. You, Philip said, his voice rougher than he intended. Me, she replied quietly. Arthur gestured between them like a conductor orchestrating a performance. Philip, this is Fiona Ann. The woman who saved your life. Fiona, my son, whom you pulled from a burning wreck with your bare hands. Fiona shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't burning yet. Just about to be. Philip almost laughed. Almost. That's your correction? Facts matter, she said, then winced like she regretted speaking. If you're loving this story of second chances and redemption, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another thrilling story. Silence stretched between them. Philip studied her, really looked. She wasn't what he expected. No makeup, no designer clothes, no calculated charm. She looked like someone who'd been awake for 36 hours and was running on nothing but adrenaline and bad coffee. Why did you do it? The question came out before he could stop it. Fiona blinked, surprised. Do what? Pull me out. You didn't know me. You could have been killed. She stared at him like he'd asked why water was wet. Because you were dying, and I could help. That's it. That's it. No grand explanation. No hidden agenda. Just raw, stupid, beautiful honesty. Philip had lived his entire life in a world where every action had a motive, every kindness had a price, every smile hid a knife. And this woman had risked her life for a stranger because she could. He didn't know what to do with that. Arthur stepped closer to the bed, his voice dropping to a murmur only Philip could hear. She didn't ask for reward or recognition. Didn't try to leverage the situation. Didn't even want to come here. I had to insist for her own safety. He paused, his gaze sharp and assessing. She just acted. That's rarer than you know. Philip looked back at Fiona. She was picking at the edge of her bandage, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, with this room, with him. And something shifted in his chest. Something unfamiliar and dangerous. How long does she have to stay? Philip asked his father, though his eyes never left Fiona. As long as it takes to ensure she's not a target. Arthur's tone left no room for argument. Your enemies know her face now. She's linked to you whether she likes it or not. Fiona's head snapped up. Wait, what? Philip almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But the truth was, she'd just walked into his world. And nobody walked out the same. Fiona tried 3 times to refuse. I appreciate the concern, but I can take care of myself. I'll stay with a friend. I'll be careful. Arthur Noah didn't even blink. The people who tried to kill my son don't leave witnesses. You were seen, photographed. By now, they know your name, where you work, probably where you live. He paused, letting that sink in. You have 2 choices. Come with us, or spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder. Fiona's stomach dropped. You're serious. I don't joke about survival. She looked at Philip, hoping for some kind of reassurance, some sign this was all overblown paranoia. But he just stared back at her with those cold, unreadable eyes and said nothing. So she agreed. Temporary protection. Just until things cooled down. That's what she told herself as the black SUV pulled through iron gates that looked like they belonged to a fortress. The Noah estate sprawled across the hillside like something out of a crime movie. manicured gardens, stone fountains, a main house so massive Fiona lost count of the windows. Everything screamed wealth and power and danger. She felt like she'd been dropped onto another planet. A housekeeper showed her to a guest room 3 times the size of her apartment. Marble bathroom, walk-in closet stocked with clothes in her size that she definitely didn't ask for. A view of the city glittering below like scattered diamonds. It was beautiful. It was suffocating. Guards patrolled the grounds. Cameras watched every corner. She couldn't take 5 steps without someone materializing to ask if she needed anything, their eyes sharp and assessing. Philip avoided her completely. When they crossed paths in the hallways, he looked through her like she was furniture. At dinner, he sat at the opposite end of the long table, responding to his father's questions in clipped sentences and ignoring Fiona entirely. She was a complication, an inconvenience, a liability he hadn't asked for. Fine, she didn't want to be here either. But that night, restless and unable to sleep in the too-soft bed, Fiona wandered downstairs. The house was quiet, dark. She found the kitchen by accident, drawn by a sliver of light under the door. Philip sat at the island counter, head in his hands, a bottle of prescription painkillers open in front of him. He looked up when she entered, jaw tightening. "What are you doing here?" "Couldn't sleep." She hesitated, then moved to the freezer. "Headache?" "Concussion," he said curtly. "It'll pass." Fiona pulled out an ice pack, wrapped it in a dish towel, and slid it across the counter toward him. "Ice helps. 20 minutes on, 20 off." Philip stared at the ice pack like it might explode. "I'm fine." "You're taking painkillers at 2 in the morning." "You're not fine." For a moment, she thought he'd tell her to leave. Instead, he picked up the ice pack and pressed it to his temple, wincing slightly. Fiona sat down across from him, keeping the counter between them. Safe distance. Silence stretched out. Not comfortable, but not hostile either. "Your house is ridiculous," she said finally. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Almost. It's my father's house." "Where's your place?" "I have an apartment downtown." "Easier for work." "Work." She didn't ask what kind. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. They sat there in the dim kitchen light, not talking about the Mafia or the accident or the fact that her entire life had been turned upside down. Just 2 people awake when they shouldn't be, existing in the same space. Philip studied her across the counter, something shifting in his expression. "You're not afraid of me." "Should I be?" "Most people are." Fiona met his gaze steadily. "You've got a concussion and you can barely keep your eyes open. Right now, you're about as threatening as a kitten." This time, he actually smiled. Small, brief, but real. And for the first time since the accident, Fiona wondered if maybe this nightmare had one redeeming feature after all. Fiona lasted 4 days before she snapped. 4 days of guards trailing her every move. 4 days of being told where she could and couldn't go in a house that felt more like a gilded cage than a sanctuary. 4 days of Philip treating her like an inconvenient piece of furniture that someone had delivered to the wrong address. She found him in his father's study, reviewing documents that he quickly closed when she barged in. "I need to talk to you." Philip didn't look up. "Make an appointment." "I'm not your employee. I'm not your possession. And I'm done being treated like both." That got his attention. He leaned back in his chair, expression cool and unreadable. "You're a guest under my father's protection." "I'm a prisoner." Fiona crossed her arms. "I can't leave. I can't go to work. I can't even walk to the garden without 3 armed men following me." "This isn't protection, it's house arrest." "It's survival," Philip said flatly. "You don't understand the world you've stepped into. Then explain it to me instead of acting like I'm too stupid to handle the truth." His eyes flashed. "You want the truth? Fine. My world doesn't work like yours. Power and fear are all that matter. Weakness gets you killed. Kindness gets you buried. You saved my life, and now you're a liability, a soft target my enemies can use against me. Then why keep me here at all?" Fiona shot back. "If I'm such a liability, why not just eliminate the witness? Isn't that how your world works?" Philip stood abruptly, moving around the desk toward her. He was taller than she remembered, and when he got close, she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. "What did you say?" Fiona refused to back down. "Your father could have made me disappear. 1 bullet, problem solved. But instead, he brought me here. He's protecting me. So tell me, Philip, if power and fear are all that matter, then why did your father choose gratitude over silence? Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair. You're more perceptive than I gave you credit for. Answer the question. Philip was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Lower, more real. The accident wasn't random. The truck was sabotaged. The driver was paid off by the Chung Syndicate, one of our oldest rivals. They've been trying to destabilize my father's organization for years. Killing me would have been the perfect opening move. Fiona's breath caught. They tried to assassinate you. And they failed because of you. Philip's jaw tightened. Which means they know who you are. They know you saved me. And they'll use that however they can, either to finish what they started or to get leverage over my family. The weight of it hit her all at once. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't overprotection. This was real. How long? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. How long do I have to stay here? Until we neutralize the threat. Or until they move on to easier targets. Philip studied her face, something unreadable in his eyes. You're stuck here, whether you like it or not. Fiona felt the walls closing in. So what am I supposed to do? Just sit around and wait to see if someone decides to kill me? Philip was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, I'll teach you. Teach me what? How to protect yourself. Basic self-defense. Situational awareness. Enough that you're not completely helpless if something happens. He met her gaze. If you're stuck here, you should know how to survive. It wasn't kindness. It was pragmatism, but it was something. Fiona nodded slowly. Okay, when do we start? Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Don't be late. As she turned to leave, Philip's voice stopped her. Fiona, she looked back. You were right. About my father. His expression was unreadable. He could have eliminated you, but he didn't. Make of that what you will. 6 a.m. came too early. Fiona found Philip in the estate's private gym, already warmed up, wearing a fitted black shirt and athletic pants. He looked every inch the predator, lean muscle, controlled movement, eyes that tracked her the moment she walked in. You're late, he said. It's 5:59. Late. The first week was brutal. Philip didn't go easy on her. He taught her how to break holds, where to strike to disable an attacker, how to use her size as an advantage instead of a weakness. He was patient but relentless, correcting her stance, adjusting her grip, demonstrating moves with clinical precision. But by the second week, something shifted. They were practicing close-quarters defense, what to do if someone grabbed you from behind. Philip's arms locked around her, firm but not painful, his chest against her back. Elbow to the ribs, he instructed. Then stamp down on the instep. Hard. Fiona tried. Failed. Tried again. Harder. You're pulling your strikes. I don't want to actually hurt you. In a real situation, you won't have that luxury. His breath was warm against her ear. Again. This time, she committed. Her elbow drove back with real force. Philip grunted, releasing her immediately. Better. He rotated his shoulder, and that's when she saw it, a jagged scar running from his collarbone down past the edge of his shirt. What happened? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Philip's expression shuddered. Nothing. That's not nothing. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he answered. Knife wound. I was 16. My father sent me on my first real mission, a negotiation that went bad. The other side's enforcer decided to make a point. He touched the scar absently. I survived. He didn't. Fiona's stomach twisted. You were just a kid. I stopped being a kid the day my father explained what our family really did. Philip's voice was flat, emotionless. In my world, you grow up fast or you don't grow up at all. Something in his tone broke her heart. I grew up in foster care, Fiona heard herself say. 6 different homes before I aged out at 18. Some were okay. Some weren't. She looked down at her hands. I learned pretty early that the world doesn't save you. You save yourself, or you don't make it. Philip's eyes sharpened, really seeing her for the first time. Is that why you did it? Why you pulled me out? Maybe. Fiona shrugged. I spent my whole childhood waiting for someone to help me. When I finally realized no one was coming, I decided I'd be the person I needed back then. Even if it's for a stranger. The silence between them felt different now. Heavier. More real. You act like you're already dead inside, Fiona said quietly. Like nothing touches you. Philip's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he'd shut down completely. Instead, he spoke so softly she almost missed it. Because everything that ever touched me came with pain. The rawness in his voice gutted her. Without thinking, Fiona reached out and took his hand. His fingers were calloused, scarred, hands that had done terrible things. But they were warm, human. I'm still here, she said. And I'm not afraid of you. Philip stared at their joined hands like he'd forgotten what human contact felt like. When he looked up, something had cracked in that carefully controlled mask he wore. You should be, but I'm not. He didn't pull away, didn't make a joke or deflect or retreat behind cold professionalism. He just stood there, holding her hand, looking at her like she was something he didn't know how to name. And for the first time since the accident, Fiona wondered if maybe she hadn't just saved Philip's life that day. Maybe he was saving hers too. Fiona woke to the sound of breaking glass. For a split second, she thought she'd dreamed it. The estate was silent, dark. Nothing moved in the shadows of her room. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, but a gloved hand clamped over her mouth before she could scream. Don't make this difficult, a voice hissed in accented English. Fiona's training kicked in. She twisted hard, drove her elbow back the way Philip taught her, aimed for the ribs. The attacker grunted, grip loosening just enough. She rolled off the bed, scrambling for the door. She didn't make it 3 steps. The man grabbed her hair, yanking her back violently. Pain exploded across her scalp. She saw the glint of a knife in his other hand, arcing toward her throat. And then Philip was there. He moved like violence personified. Fluid, precise, terrifying. He caught the attacker's wrist mid-strike, twisted it with a sickening crack. The knife clattered to the floor. The man tried to fight back, throwing a punch that Philip deflected effortlessly before driving his own fist into the attacker's throat. The man choked, stumbling backward. Philip didn't stop. He was on him in seconds, brutal and efficient. A knee to the gut. Elbow to the temple. Then his hands around the man's neck, squeezing with cold, methodical pressure until the struggling stopped. Until the body went limp. Until there was nothing left but silence and death. Fiona stood frozen, back pressed against the wall, watching Philip Noah kill a man with his bare hands. No hesitation, no mercy, just raw, calculated violence. This was what he really was. Not the man who taught her self-defense or sat with her in quiet kitchens. This was the heir to a criminal empire. The weapon his father had forged. The killer. Philip released the body, letting it drop to the floor. He was breathing hard, knuckles split and bleeding. When he turned to face her, his eyes were still dark with adrenaline and rage. Are you hurt? His voice was rough, shaking. Fiona couldn't speak, couldn't move. Philip crossed the room in 3 strides, hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching. Fiona, are you hurt? No. The word came out barely a whisper. I'm okay. His hands were trembling. She'd never seen him shake before. Guards flooded into the room, too late, always too late. Philip barked orders she didn't process, his body still positioned between her and the corpse on her floor. Someone led her to a different room. Someone else cleaned up the body. Fiona sat on the edge of a guest bed, staring at nothing, while Philip stood at the window with his back to her. His shirt was torn. Blood, not his, stained the fabric. A medical kit sat unopened on the dresser. Fiona's hands were still shaking when she stood, picked up the kit, and walked toward him. Sit down. Philip turned, expression carefully blank. I'm fine. Your knuckles are split. Sit down. He obeyed. Maybe because he was too tired to argue. Maybe because he didn't trust himself to speak. Fiona cleaned the blood from his hands with gentle, precise movements. His skin was warm beneath her fingers. His breathing was still uneven. I saw what you did, she whispered. Philip went rigid, waiting for her judgment, her fear, her rejection. I know what you are. He closed his eyes like her words were a physical blow. Fiona set down the antiseptic, cupped his face with both hands, and forced him to look at her. And I'm still here. Something broke in his expression. Relief. Disbelief. Something desperate and raw. Philip pulled her into his arms with sudden fierce intensity, burying his face in her hair. I won't let them have you. His voice cracked. I won't. I can't. Fiona wrapped her arms around him, holding him just as tightly. I know. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes searching hers for something, permission, maybe. Forgiveness, hope, and then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and grateful and claiming all at once. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers clutched his torn shirt. It was a kiss that tasted like violence and salvation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Philip rested his forehead against hers. You should run from me, he whispered. Fiona smiled, sad and certain. Too late for that. Arthur Noah didn't knock. He walked into Philip's office the morning after the attack, closed the door with deliberate calm, and poured himself a drink despite the early hour. We need to talk about the girl. Philip didn't look up from the security reports on his desk. Her name is Fiona. I don't care what her name is. Arthur took a measured sip. I care that you're getting attached. That makes you vulnerable. She was nearly killed last night. Because of you. Because she's connected to you. Arthur set down his glass with a sharp click. That's exactly my point. In our business, caring about someone is the fastest way to get them, or yourself, killed. Philip's jaw tightened. She's under our protection. Protection is one thing. What I saw in that room last night was something else entirely. Arthur's eyes were cold, assessing. You looked at her the way your grandfather looked at your grandmother. And you know how that story ended. Philip did know. His grandmother had been used as leverage in a territory war. She'd died in a car bomb meant for his grandfather. The old man never recovered. The Chung syndicate won't stop, Arthur continued. Not now. Not after their assassin failed. They're going to escalate, and every day that girl stays in this house, she's a target. He paused, letting that sink in. Unless we strike first. Hard enough that they can't retaliate. Philip looked up. What are you proposing? A coordinated hit. Take out their leadership. Their infrastructure. Send a message so clear that no one will dare come after this family again. Arthur's expression hardened. I need you to lead it. When? 3 days. I've already got the intel team working. Arthur studied his son. Can I count on you? Or has the waitress made you soft? The challenge hung in the air like a blade. You can count on me, Philip said quietly. I'll handle it. Arthur nodded, satisfied. Good. Because weakness gets you killed in this world. And I won't lose my son to sentimentality. After his father left, Philip sat in the silence, staring at the closed door. He didn't tell Fiona about the operation. Didn't mention the planning sessions or the surveillance or the weapons being moved into position. He told himself it was to protect her. To keep her separate from the ugliest parts of his world. But the distance grew anyway. Fiona noticed immediately. The way Philip avoided her eyes at dinner. The way he disappeared for hours into locked rooms. The way he kissed her goodnight like he was already saying goodbye. Talk to me, she said one evening, cornering him in the hallway. You've been shutting me out for days. I'm handling business. That's all. That's not all. Something's wrong. Fiona, don't. Her voice cracked. Don't lie to me. Not after everything. Philip wanted to tell her. Wanted to pull her close and explain that he was doing this to keep her safe. But the words wouldn't come. I have to go, he said instead, and walked away. The operation happened 2 nights later. Clean, efficient, devastating. Fiona learned about it from the news. 3 members of the Chung family dead. A warehouse burned to the ground. And buried in the coverage, almost as an afterthought. Collateral damage. A family living in the apartment above the warehouse. 2 children. She found Philip in his father's study, pouring bourbon like the weight of the world sat on his shoulders. You used me. Her voice was hollow. Philip looked up, and she saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. Last week, I mentioned that new Korean market on 5th Street. Said it reminded me of a place I used to go as a kid. Fiona's hands were shaking. That warehouse was 2 blocks from that market. You used what I told you to narrow down their location. Fiona. Children died, Philip. Tears streamed down her face. 2 kids who had nothing to do with any of this. And you, her voice broke. I didn't save your life so you could take others without conscience. It wasn't without conscience. Philip's voice was raw. I think about every person. Every consequence. But in my world, hesitation gets more people killed. I did what I had to do to protect this family. To protect you. Don't you dare put this on me. Fiona backed toward the door. I never asked for this. Never asked you to become a monster in my name. I was already a monster. Philip's composure shattered. You just hadn't seen it yet. This is who I am, Fiona. This is what I do. She stared at him, this man she'd saved, this man she'd started to love, and saw the unbridgeable gap between them. Then maybe I saved the wrong person, she whispered. And walked out. Fiona packed the small bag they'd given her when she first arrived. 3 weeks' worth of borrowed clothes. A phone with numbers she'd never call. Nothing that was really hers. She was leaving. Tonight. Danger or no danger. Philip found her at the front entrance, bag in hand, arguing with the night security guard who'd been told not to let her pass. Move aside, Chen. The guard hesitated, then stepped back. Philip looked at Fiona, really looked at her. Red-rimmed eyes, jaw set with determination, every inch of her screaming that she was done. You can't leave. Watch me. The Chung Syndicate. I don't care. Her voice was steady despite the fear he could see in her eyes. I'd rather die free than live complicit in more violence. I can't do this, Philip. I can't be the excuse you use to justify becoming your father. That's not what you are. Then what am I? She stepped closer, desperate for him to understand. Because right now, I feel like a shield you hide behind. A reason to pull the trigger without feeling the weight of it. And I won't be that. Not for you. Not for anyone. Philip felt something crack open in his chest. This woman, who'd risked everything to save a stranger, who'd faced down assassins and refused to run, who'd seen the worst of him and still stayed, was willing to walk into certain death rather than watch him destroy himself. And she was right. Come with me, he said quietly. What? Just trust me. One more time. Fiona searched his face, looking for the lie. Whatever she saw made her nod. Philip led her to his father's office where Arthur sat with 3 senior members of the organization, reviewing territory maps and discussing their next move against weakened enemies. All conversation stopped when Philip walked in with Fiona. We need to talk, Philip said. All of you. Arthur's expression darkened. This isn't the time. This is exactly the time. Philip's voice carried the weight of finality. The operation against the Chung family was successful. But the cost was unacceptable. 2 children died. Innocent civilians caught in our war. One of the older men shrugged. Collateral damage. It happens. It doesn't have to. Philip looked at his father. I'm done running this organization the old way. When I take over, and I will take over, things are going to change. We minimize violence. We protect families, even enemy families. We choose strategic peace over endless war. The room erupted. You've lost your mind. This is weakness. The girl has poisoned your judgment. Arthur raised a hand. Silence fell immediately. You'd risk everything we built for a woman? His voice was dangerously quiet. Philip met his father's eyes without flinching. No, I'd risk everything we built for the chance to be better than what we've been. To break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. He glanced at Fiona, then back to Arthur. She showed me that's possible. That there's another way. And I'm going to prove it. By going soft? By showing mercy to people who'd kill you the first chance they get? By being strategic instead of reactive. By building alliances instead of burning bridges. By remembering that every body we leave behind creates 3 more enemies. Philip's voice hardened. The old way is dying, father. You know it. I know it. We either evolve or we become extinct. Arthur stared at his son for a long, tense moment. Philip had never openly challenged him like this. Never declared his own path so clearly. Finally, Arthur spoke. You're willing to stake your life, and this family's legacy, on this belief? Yes. Then prove it. Arthur's eyes were cold, but there was something else underneath. Respect, maybe. Or fear. Run your operations your way. Build your alliances. Show me this new path actually works. He leaned forward. But if it fails, if your mercy gets this family killed, the blood is on your hands. All of it. Philip nodded. I accept those terms. Arthur looked at Fiona, still standing in the doorway. You've turned my son into either a visionary or a fool. I hope for all our sakes it's the former. Then he waved them both out. In the hallway, Fiona finally breathed. What did you just do? Started a revolution, Philip said quietly. Or signed our death warrants. Possibly both. She took his hand. Then we'd better make it work. The wedding was Arthur's idea, a strategic alliance with the Park family, designed to strengthen their position while Philip rebuilt the organization from the inside. Political theater dressed up as celebration. Fiona was in the estate salon, surrounded by stylists and seamstresses when the lights went out. She knew immediately something was wrong. The backup generators should have kicked in within seconds. They didn't. The door burst open. Not guards. Wrong uniforms. Wrong faces. Fiona ran. She made it halfway down the corridor before someone grabbed her from behind. She fought, elbow to the ribs, stomped to the instep, everything Philip taught her. One attacker went down, but there were 3 more. A cloth pressed over her mouth. Chemical smell. Her vision blurred. The last thing she heard was gunfire in the distance and Philip screaming her name. Philip tore through the estate like a hurricane. 4 guards dead. Fiona gone. Security footage showed a van leaving through the service entrance. The Chung Syndicate. It had to be. Mobilize everyone, he told his father, voice deadly calm. Every asset we have. I want locations. I want surveillance. I want her back in the next 3 hours or I burn their entire organization to the ground. Arthur made the calls. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, they had a location. An old textile factory on the waterfront. Thermal imaging showed 8 hostiles and 1 captive in the basement. Philip went in with 12 men. No negotiation. No mercy. The raid was brutal and efficient. Philip moved through the building like death itself, every shot precise, every movement calculated. This was what he'd been trained for. What he'd spent his whole life becoming. A weapon. He found Fiona in the basement, zip-tied to a chair, blood running from a cut above her eyebrow. But her eyes were fierce. Defiant. Alive. One of her captors lay unconscious on the floor, jaw clearly broken. I remembered what you taught me, she said hoarsely when he cut her free. Philip pulled her against him, shaking with relief. You're okay. You're okay. Behind you. Philip spun, gun already raised. The Chung boss's son stood in the doorway, weapon drawn. Young. Maybe 25. Eyes wild with desperation and rage. You killed my father, the young man spat. Took everything from us. Your father tried to kill me first, Philip said evenly. This is where it ends. Put down the gun. So you can execute me like you executed him? Bitter laugh. I know how this works. Philip's finger rested on the trigger. 1 shot. Clean. Simple. Exactly what his father would do. What the old Philip would have done without hesitation. End the threat. Eliminate the enemy. Win. His father's voice echoed in his head. Weakness gets you killed. But then Fiona's hand touched his arm. Gentle. Grounding. You're not that man anymore, she said softly. Philip looked at her, bloodied but unbroken, believing in him even now, and felt something shift. He lowered his weapon. You're right. I'm not. He met the young man's shocked stare. Your father and mine fought the same war for 30 years. Both lost people they loved. Both created more enemies than allies. Philip holstered his gun. I'm offering you something they never had. A choice. What choice? Permanent truce. Shared territory. We end this cycle, the revenge, the retaliation, the endless bloodshed. You honor the peace, I honor it. We build something different than what our fathers left us. The gun in the young man's hand trembled. Why would you do that? Philip glanced at Fiona. Because someone showed me there's another way to be strong. And I'm done proving myself through body counts. Silence stretched impossibly long. Then, slowly, the Chung heir lowered his weapon. One condition, he said. The families who died in your warehouse strike, their medical bills, education costs, everything. Your organization covers it. Done. The young man studied Philip for a long moment, then nodded. My father would call this weakness. Mine too, Philip said. Maybe they were both wrong. If you're loving this story of second chances and redemption, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another thrilling story. 6 months later, the city looked different to Fiona. Or maybe she was the one who'd changed. She stood in the community center's main hall, watching kids from 3 different neighborhoods, territories that used to be war zones, play basketball together. The building had been a condemned warehouse until Philip bought it, renovated it, and handed her the keys. Make something good, he'd said. Show them what's possible. So she did. Youth programs, job training, after-school tutoring, all funded by NOAA money, but run by people who actually cared about the community. It wasn't redemption, not exactly. But it was a start. Arthur appeared in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching the organized chaos with an expression Fiona had learned to read. Not quite approval, but not disapproval either. The Chung family donated new equipment for the computer lab, she told him. Arthur's eyebrow raised a fraction. Did they? Their heir said something about investing in shared futures. Fiona smiled. I think your son is rubbing off on people. Terrifying thought. But there was warmth underneath the sarcasm. Arthur had fought Philip's new direction every step of the way, until the numbers started coming in. Lower casualties, higher profits, fewer enemies, stronger alliances. Turns out peace was good for business. He's looking for you, Arthur said. Something about an errand. Fiona found Philip waiting by his car, dressed in a simple black shirt and jeans. No bodyguards, no weapons visible, just him. Where are we going? She asked. You'll see. He drove through the city as afternoon bled into evening, finally stopping at an intersection she recognized immediately. The place where everything changed. The street had been repaired. New pavement, fresh paint on the crosswalk. No evidence of the crash that had nearly killed him. But Fiona could still see it, the flames, the twisted metal, Philip's blood on her hands. Why are we here? Her voice came out smaller than intended. Philip turned to face her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Because this is where my life actually started. He took her hand. Everything before this moment was just existing. Going through the motions. Becoming what I was told to be. He stepped out of the car, pulling her gently with him until they stood at the exact spot where she'd pulled him from the wreckage. Then Philip Noah, heir to a criminal empire, the man who'd killed without hesitation, who'd been raised to view mercy as weakness, dropped to one knee. You saved my life that day, he said, voice steady but eyes bright with emotion. Let me spend the rest of it proving I was worth saving. Marry me, Fiona, not because my father declared it. Not because you're in danger or because it's strategic. Marry me because you want to. Because you choose me. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. Real. Fiona's hands trembled as tears spilled down her cheeks. I choose you, Philip Noah. Her voice broke. Every dangerous, complicated, beautiful part of you. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, stood, and kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. They married 3 weeks later at sunset, on the estate grounds under an arch of white flowers. No political alliances, no strategic guests, just the people they trusted, Arthur, looking almost proud, the few friends Fiona had made, allies who'd become family. The Chung heir attended, standing respectfully in the back row. A symbol of the impossible made real. As they danced their first dance, Fiona leaned close and whispered, "We're writing a different story." Philip pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. We already did. The day you refused to let me burn. Later, they stood together at the estate's balcony, watching the sun set over the city. His arm around her waist. Her head on his shoulder. The skyline glittered with possibility. Do you ever regret it? Philip asked quietly. Running into that fire? Fiona thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the violence, the impossible choices, the transformation of a man who'd been taught that love was weakness into someone who chose compassion as his greatest strength. Not for a second, she said. Because Fiona Ann hadn't just saved a life that day on the burning road. She'd saved a soul. And in doing so, she'd found her own home in the most unexpected place, not in a mansion or an empire, but in the heart of a man who'd learned that true strength wasn't about how hard you could hit. It was about knowing when to lower your weapon and choose peace instead. They were building something new together. Not perfect, not without challenges, but theirs. A legacy written not in blood and fear, but in second chances and the fierce belief that even in the darkest worlds, love could be the most dangerous weapon of all. And the most powerful.